Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey folks, today we are finally going to take a look at Kemet from Matagot Games. Now, if you've been a fan of the channel, then this shouldn't be a surprise to you that this is going to be a positive review of the game, because you've probably seen it on the shelf behind me for quite a long time. I have put it on both of my top 100 lists very highly, and I probably put it in a top 10 list at some point. I really enjoy this game, but for some reason I just never got around to a review of it. Well, I know the reason. It's because my review backlog is a million miles long, and I actually got this game before I started the channel. So it just kind of fell to the wayside and wasn't really considered for review content. But nevertheless, we're going to go ahead and do it now because a new expansion is out for the game, and that video should be going up along with this one, the Ta Seti expansion. So you can check that out as well. I'm not going to give you my thoughts on that one yet and spoil that at least. But anyways, if you're not familiar with Kemet, it has been called a light war game. I think war game is a very specific type of game, so I hesitate to call it that. But certainly this is a combat-oriented, very combat-oriented, and territory control game. You and the other players take control of, I guess it's Egyptian gods, or the factions of Egyptian gods, their earthly factions, who are, you have different units that you use to manipulate around the board, but you also use prayer points to use the powers of these gods in order to get these power tiles that give you different special abilities. Some of them are just very simple things like combat strength. Some of them give you giant monsters, which you can use out on the field. And this is an interesting game in the sense that it's sort of a hybrid. You have these Ameritrash elements of dudes on the map fighting, but also you have sort of a worker placement action selection mechanism in order to actually utilize these powers. So let me go ahead and give you a brief look at how the game is played, if none of that made sense to you. Then we're going to come back, I'll let you know what I think, even though you already know what I think. Alright, I'm going to try to give you a quick breakdown of Kemet. This is a competitive game for 2 to 5 players. The first thing I'll mention is that this board is actually double-sided. Depending on the number of players that you want to play with, you'll use a different side of the board, and also depending on the number of players, certain parts of the board will be completely unusable for your player count. So for instance, this is the 3 or 5 player side. If you are only playing with 3 players, this entire bank of the board is unusable. It is not used. In fact, you can fold back one part of the board just to remind yourself of that. You will only battle over here. But if you play with all 5 players, it's the whole thing. And it's basically the same thing on the other side, which is for 2 or 4 players. The other main difference between this side of the board and the other side is that you don't have the Sanctuary of All Gods, this large temple up here. Well, it's not technically a temple. We'll get into all of that. Now, the goal of the game is to be the first one to get to either 8 or 10 points. If you want a longer game, you play up to 10 points. But it's not enough to get up to that point threshold, whatever you decide on. You also have to maintain victory until the end of that round, the end of the day phase of that round. So, for instance, there's a series of tiebreakers. If you get to the end of a phase in which someone has hit 8 victory points and no one has surpassed that person, then they are the winner. But if someone gets more than 8 victory points, they're going to be the winner. Or it goes down to who has the most battle victory points, and so on. But essentially, the game is going to keep going, and there's no set number of rounds. You just keep playing until someone hits that threshold. You keep going through a night phase, which is sort of the preparation phase for each of the rounds, and then the day phase, which is where you take all of your actions. Another important distinction is that there are such different types of victory points. There's all these different stacks over here. And the 2 different important things to note is that you get them from a variety of different ways, but also any of the square victory point tiles are permanent. Any of the circular ones are temporary. The difference here is that if you get a permanent victory point, you get those for things like battling and for getting certain tiles, power tiles in the game, or for certain other feats that you achieve during the course of the game. And when you gain those, nothing can take them away from you. However, the temporary victory point tiles, which are the circular ones, you can lose those because you only gain those for having control of certain territories. Once you lose control, you lose those victory points, but they will still count towards victory if you can maintain them till the end of a round in which someone hits 8 or 10 victory points. Now, the whole map is divided into different spaces. Any of those white lines depict large spaces that you can move through. And also there are cities. Each player is going to have control of a city at the start of the game. And the game map is set up in such a way that all the cities are, I don't know if equidistant is the right word, but no city has a distinct advantage over the other cities as far as placement, regardless of the number of players that you're playing with. It's as easy for players to get to one section or one area on the board as it is for any of the other players to get to one area on the board. Now, in each player's city at the start of the game, you have to do a couple of things. First off, you will have a set of troops in your color. These are your individual units. They all have the same capabilities. They're just in different player colors. And once you've chosen your color, you're going to put 10 troops down into your city. Now, each city is split up into 3 districts. You can distribute those units however you want within the districts. However, each conglomeration of units is called a troop, and you are limited to a maximum of 5 units in one troop. Now, in this game, you can actually get control of monsters, and those don't count as units, but you can only have 5 of these little guys, and you'll distribute them out however you want. So you can do two troops of 5, or you can spread them out like I have them spread out here. The other important thing that you do is the pyramids. The pyramids are important for a couple of different reasons during the course of the game. So first off, each of the pyramids can be raised. They're big D4s, right? So they have 1, 2, 3, and 4 on them, and they will start off at a certain level. At the beginning of the game, you decide whether you want to have 3 pyramids all at level 1 in your city, or whether you want to choose 2 of the pyramids and put one of them at level 2 and one of them at level 1, like I've done with a couple of the other sample cities here. And there's 2 main purposes for this. One is that the levels of your pyramids determine what level of power tiles you can take. So if I have a level 2 white pyramid, I can take up to level 2 of the white tiles. If I had level 3, I could take up to level 3 and 4, and so on and so forth. If I have a pyramid that's level 0, meaning it's not out on the map, then I can't get any of the power tiles for that color. The other important thing is that when you raise a pyramid up to its maximum level, which is 4, aside from just giving you access to the most powerful of the power tiles for that color, it also counts as a temporary victory point. You will take one of these victory points and put it on your in your character or player area, and so long as you control that pyramid, you're going to have access to that temporary victory point. However, other players can defeat it's possible you just abandon a pyramid altogether, but regardless of whether they defeat your troops that are still there or whether they just take it from you, if one of your opponents controls an area with one of your pyramids, not only do they gain access to the benefits of that pyramid for taking power tiles, but if it's a level 4, they also get that temporary victory point from you. Now, every player is also going to get a player board. There's different Egyptian depictions of, I guess, gods that are on each of them, but otherwise they are functionally the same. They're not even really color coded to the different player piece colors. They just kind of are these different creatures and people. So you're going to take a player board. You're going to get a prayer point marker, which you're going to set on the 5, which is your prayer point track up at the top. You have 2 extra units. There's 10 units that you start off with in the game, are out on the board, and then 2 that you keep in your reserve. If ever your units are destroyed or recalled, they will come back to your reserve, and you can replace them or recruit them back onto the board later. You also have 5 action markers, and these are the action spaces that you'll be using during the course of the game. We'll get back to those in a minute. I want to explain all the basic other stuff too. Every player is going to start off with 1 Divine Intervention card. There's a small stack of Divine Intervention cards that you will be using during the course of the game. We'll come back to those. And then every player gets a stack of battle cards. Now, every player has the exact same set of 6 battle cards that they're going to use during the course of the game, and they have different symbols on them. There's 3 main symbols. There is attack strength, or what is called strength, protection. Attack strength determines whether or not you are going to win a battle. The higher the strength with ties going to defender is going to win a battle. So that's obviously the most important. However, you may have damage. Damage is this blood mark. Any damage that you deal to the enemy means that not only are you potentially defeating them, but whether you win or lose, any blood is going to kill a unit for every blood that you have, for every damage that you have. And that is where, and I just dropped it, the protection symbol comes in. Because if you have protection on the battle card that you play, you cancel out some of those damage symbols. So we'll get more into combat, but that's basically what you can expect on all these. So there's different denominations, different numbers of these different combinations of symbols, and everyone has the exact same set of 6 cards. And before we go into the gameplay, I just want to go back out to the map and explain one last thing, and those are the different temples that are out on the map. So, a couple things. First off, if you have control of a temple, that's another opportunity for you to get a temporary victory point. You have these little temporary victory point chips, which you'll take if you have control of a particular temple because you have your troop there. So you'll take that temporary point. And there's a couple of them down here. Again, this is going to depend on how many players you play with, but there's 2 more here, and there's another one here, and there's actually one up at the top of the map as well. And if you happen to have control of 2 of those temples at the end of a round, you actually get a permanent victory point. This is sort of a bonus that you get just for maintaining control of 2 of those temples. You'll put that with the rest of your stock. That's in addition to your temporary victory point bonus as well. You may also notice that there's these little prayer point sigils, ankhs, next to each of them, and that's the victory point symbol for the temporary one. At the end of the round, if you have control of a temple, you gain these bonus prayer points on top of what you would normally gain. And they're actually in different denominations. You see these are 3 because those are a little more hotly contested. And then up the top here, this is a special one. You don't automatically get prayer points, but if you choose to sacrifice one of your units that is there on that temple back to your reserve, you'll get 5 prayer points. Now, here's where we'll talk about the Sanctuary of All Gods, because this does not count as a temple. You won't get a temporary victory point for holding it. It doesn't count for holding 2 and getting a permanent victory point. But rather, if you have control of this temple, this quote-unquote temple, during the end of the round, you can sacrifice 2 of your units there in order to gain a special permanent victory point that looks like that. So that's another way for you to get permanent victory points during the course of the game, but you do have to sack 2 people. I'll also note that there is the only way that you can get to these are with those obelisks. You see those obelisks there, and they're in these other temples, and then there's one out in the middle of nowhere there and there. In order to get to those obelisks, you need to teleport from your pyramids. That's the only way that you're going to be able to do that. If you have a troop in one of your city districts with a pyramid, or someone else's pyramid that you have gained control of, you can teleport to those obelisks, and we're going to get to all of that. But I figured it'd be worth actually explaining what's all on the map before we go into turn order. Oh, and on that note, one last thing. The top here, is a turn order track. This is for 5 players. This is for 3 players. Every player has a marker of their own color, and that is how the turn order will be determined. That's going to change round to round. At the beginning, it's random, but then from every round afterwards, it's whoever has the least amount of victory points gets to determine the turn order. It's not just that they go first. They get to set the entire turn order for the round. All right, so let's just jump right into it. The first thing you do every round of the game is the night phase. The night phase is basically just prep before you get to the real action. The first thing that happens is that every player is going to gain 2 more prayer points unless they have special bonuses like controlling the temples. And then everyone's going to get an extra Divine Intervention card from the deck to add to their hand of Divine Intervention cards. Those are special power cards, which I'll explain in a moment. And then if you have any tiles that give you special powers during the night phase, you do that now, and then you determine the turn order, and you set the new turn order for the next main phase, which is the day phase, the action phase. This is where you're going to make use of all the different spots on your player board. And how it will work, this is the kind of game like this, where you will, on your turn, you're going to take one of your action markers, put it over one of the action spaces, commence with that action, complete the full action, and then it goes to the next player. Then the next player is going to take an action, and so on and so forth, until every player has used all 5 of their action discs. Once that has happened, the round is officially over. Then you're going to proceed to the night phase, and then do it all over again. Before I even explain what everything is, I will explain that by the time you've used all 5 of your action markers, you must have one action marker on each of the tiers, at least one. So for instance, I can't just spam all 4 of the bottom rows here, or I can't just do it like this. You have to have at least one action from each tier taken and spread them out in that way. So let me go through these actions. I'll start with kind of the simplest ones first and then work our way up. So first off, you have the recruitment action. The recruitment action is very simple. You're going to put your marker there and you're going to spend as many prayer points as you want and take that many units from your reserve. So at the beginning of the game, you only have 2 to put out. And you will put them out into either a district in your city or, well, that's it, actually. So you can only summon in your own district. And again, you have to follow the rules of the troop. You can only have 5 units in a troop. Now, if there's an empty district, you can do that. Or if you only have 3 or 4, you can do that. But it has to be in your city. It has to follow the regular troop capacity rules. It is interesting, however, because let's say that one of my opponents was able to take one of the districts in my city. All right, if that happens, I can actually still summon into this area, and if I do, a battle immediately takes place and I can try to take it back, and we'll explain battle in a moment, but you always have the capacity to summon into your own district. The next type of action I'll explain is the prayer symbol. There's 2 different prayer symbols that you can take. This just very simply gives you 2 prayer points. You'll move your marker up as it applies. Next is the raise a pyramid action. When you raise a pyramid, you're going to choose a pyramid that either you've already built out into your city, or if you haven't built all 3 of your pyramids because you took the 2-in-1 option at the start of the game, you can raise up your 3rd pyramid now to level 1 and actually put it out into your city. When you raise up a pyramid, you need to spend a number of prayer points equal to whatever level you're raising it up to. So if you're raising a 0 to a 1, it's 1 point. If you are raising a 2 to a 3, you need to spend 3 points. And you can actually do multiple levels at the same time, but only for the same pyramid. So I can take a level 1 red and get it all the way up to level 4, theoretically, if I want to, but that's going to cost me, 9 points. So that's going to be a lot of prayer points, and your capacity is only 11, but you can do it. Then down at the bottom of our action board, you have 3 different spots for 3 different power tiles. This is what these are. These are your capabilities of purchasing power tiles. So basically, I will put one of my action markers on the type of power tile I want to buy. Then I have to spend the right amount of prayer points, and I'll be able to take the tile. But this means that even if you may want to buy more than one tile on the same round, you can't do it for the same color unless something special is going on. So let's go ahead and take a look at these power tiles because, or somehow or some forth. There we go. And I'm not going to go over every single one, but I just want to give you a taste of what they're like. So every tier of tiles, levels 1 through 4, you have to spend that many prayer points. So all the level 1 tiles cost you 1, and so on and so forth. And they all give you either some sort of special power or access to a monster unit. Like here we see the Sphinx and the War Element and the Elephant and the Snake, the Scorpion, the Phoenix, and the Beetle. And then the white tiles only have this Mummy that they can have access to. But notice that there's also those little silver discs there, which are extra action tokens. And the blue and red tiles, there's one that actually gives you an extra battle card that you use to a better power battle card that you use to replace one of your older ones. All of these different things can be yours if the price is right, but also if you take the right power tile. And they have a variety of other effects, which is kind of tough because it's got limitations on my camera. These are all the way at the other side of the table, but I'll try to illustrate it anyways. So, for instance, this one very simply is going to give you +1 to damage whenever you are the attacker, whereas the blue tiles gives you one of their level 1s gives you a +1 when you are the defender. There's a white tile that's pretty powerful that reduces the cost of all of your future power tiles by 1, so long as you have control of that tile. There's also every color has a tile that's going to give you access to that silver disc, which is an extra action that you can take along with one of your other actions. So you'll always only have 5 turns in a round, but that'll give you an extra disc to place down. Blue actually has a special tile. It's called, I think, the Divine Will tile, which gives you access to a golden disc, which specifically lets you do either a recruit or a move, an extra recruit or an extra move action, again, along with by placing it at the top of your pyramid at that golden symbol, along with one of your other regular action discs. Now, the monsters are really one of the highlights of the game, and they all have different special abilities and capabilities. They can increase your strength, they can increase your movement, they can increase your defense and protection against losing people, and so on and so forth. The snake actually increases your movement. The Sphinx is going to get you an extra victory point, I believe. And the Phoenix can fly over walls. Now, that's an important thing I haven't mentioned yet, but you can't really... It's more difficult to attack someone through their city walls, so the Phoenix makes that significantly easier. So, all these different power tiles... and by the way, well, let me explain more about the monsters. So, let's say that I take the Scorpion monster. If I take the Scorpion monster tile, I'll put it in front of me, and then I can actually put the Scorpion down into my city... if I actually have a troop out in the city that can take it. It has to be into my city, and I have to have a troop that only one monster per troop. And again, it doesn't count as a unit, which means I can have 5 units in the troop plus a monster. So, and I can put it into my city as long as it's into a district that has at least 1 unit. If ever my entire troop is wiped out with my monster, the monster goes back on its power tile next to me until I recruit back into the city. Also, if I take the power tile with the monster and there happens to be no troops in my city whatsoever, or no units at all, I can just hold on to the monster until I recruit there for the first time. Then I link it to that troop, and it moves around with that troop, giving it its special abilities. So the last action that we need to talk about, and there's 2 different spaces that grant you this action on your board, is the move/attack action. This action lets you move one of your troops 1 space unless you have something special going on, like a monster that's giving you more special abilities or powers or something like that. And if it's very simply moving from space to space, then that's no problem. Nothing happens. But if there is ever a troops in the space that you are moving into, right then and there, a battle is going to happen. Same thing, like I said, if you teleport troops into one of your districts that has enemy troops in it, a battle will happen right away. So whenever you move into enemy troops, a battle is going to commence. Now, movement is usually pretty simple. It's just from space to space. One thing I will say, though, is your city walls. This is what I alluded to earlier. Let's say that you have the capability to move more than 1 space in your turn because of your monster or whatever it might be. Even if you have the capability to do that and there's no enemies in your way, you always have to start next to city walls in order to move past them and breach them. So if I had more movement, I couldn't go move and move right into the city district. I would have to move, and then I stop my movement. For the next time I take a move attack action, as long as this troop started off here right next to my opponent's city walls, I can move. Then I can move into there. It's just a way to slow down and impede your enemy. But like I said, the Phoenix monster is going to get over that. So okay, how does battle actually work? Let's say the battle is taking place here. So both players have the exact same set of these 6 battle cards. And how this will work is that you're going to look at all 6 of the cards that you have, choose the one that you want to play, and put it face down. Then you're going to choose another one of the remaining 5 cards and either put it face down off to the side as a discard pile, or you put it face up. You and the other players decide how you want to do that. I recommend face down. But that is your discard. So every time that you have a battle, you're playing 1 card and discarding another one. In that way, you're going to cycle through your hands, and you do not get these cards back until you've used all of them. Once both players have played a card and discarded a card, you flip over and compare battle strength. You add every single unit that you have in a battle counts as 1. Your monsters may increase your attack strength, your units count as 1 strength. Your monsters may increase your attack strength, divine intervention cards might, and so on. And then you add it all together. Whoever has the higher strength with ties going to the defender is the winner of the battle. If you have any damage that you're dealing, you might potentially kill troops from your opponent's side, but protection can cancel that out. If you win a battle and you still have at least 1 troop left, because it's possible you can win a battle but all your troops get wiped out due to damage, then you get a permanent battle victory point, which looks like this. That's one of the main ways that you get the permanent victory points during the course of the game. If you lose a battle, you have 2 options. You're either going to retreat or you're going to recall. So let's say this is the battle here, and blue was defeated. If blue chooses to retreat, yellow gets to determine in what direction he goes off to. Now here, there's actually a couple of options. I can either force blue to retreat back to another district space, or out beyond the city walls. But if there's more than one option, a winner of the battle gets to choose where they retreat to, assuming they're not wiped out. Alternatively, the blue player could decide to just recall them back to his reserve. For every unit that he recalls, and it's all or nothing, you can't split it. For every unit he recalls, he gets an extra prayer point back. Now, when you play down battle cards, you may optionally play Divine Intervention cards secretly underneath those cards as well. And in fact, Divine Intervention cards can be used during the course of the game in other instances as well. So let me go ahead and show you those real quick. You have cards that give you +1 to strength and damage and protection. Some of them give you +2, but you have to spend a prayer point in order to do it. This one gives you 2 prayer points just for playing it. This one gives you 2 free recruits. This one kills an enemy troop for a prayer point. This one lets you teleport to an obelisk, not just from a pyramid to an obelisk. This one lets you breach the city walls easily, or this one steals a power prayer point from other players and gives you 1. And this one actually lets you escape from a battle, and that doesn't take place. So that's really the game. I know that was a quick run through, sort of, but you're just trying to get as many victory points, whether it's permanent victory points or temporary victory points, as you possibly can. Once every player has taken all 5 of their actions, you go on to the next round and do it all over again. That is Kemet. Let's get to my final thoughts. Well, as you already know, I love this game. I really do. I mean, where do I even start? First off, it's Madagot Games, which means that you know it's going to look fantastic. And actually, I think that, Kemet's been out for a few years now. I think that this was the first of their games that people actually noticed that. They're like, whoa, that's a nice-looking game. The miniatures are great. For board game miniatures, I mean, I'm not a miniature aficionado, but for board game miniatures, they're very well done. The map looks good. It's nice and clear. The artwork on the power tiles and on the character player boards, those all look very nice. The game just looks really sleek. I mean, even if you just look at the box of the game, that immediately catches your eye and says, that's a game I want to know more about and possibly play and possibly start killing Egyptian characters and gods and mythical creatures. And that's another thing too, is that I think that even though the fantasy elements of this game are very pronounced and they are in there, it's not overwhelming. It is a thematic game in the sense that it feels like you're an army with giant monsters fighting each other, but it's not so thematic that I think that theme, it's kind of hard for me to explain this, but I don't think the theme sort of drowns out any of the gameplay mechanisms, meaning that you could enjoy this game even if fantasy is not typically your thing. And that's another interesting thing to talk about, because I mentioned this in my intro, the fact that it is that hybrid of a game, that you have the Ameritrash elements with the Eurogame elements. I have seen this game be very, very successful with people who only usually fall down on one side or the other of that argument of which side is better, what they prefer. This game mixes together so many disparate elements from those two things that it just works very well. The simultaneous action selection, the hand management of the Divine Intervention cards, which really are the only real luck in the game, other than what is my opponent going to choose. Is he going to choose very thoughtfully or just randomly like, I don't know what to do? But with the battle selection cards, that whole element, taking as much luck as possible out of the mix, is very interesting to people who hate luck in other types of war games, like games where you're just rolling a bunch of dice, or the bucket of dice type combat games. So that really appeals to a lot of people as well. And for me, I love the power tile system. I really do. With the pyramids, I haven't even touched on the pyramids yet. That's how much content is in the game. The system of leveling them up, deciding which route you want to go down. I think that one of the, and this has been bandied about back and forth on the forums, I know that, but one of the faults that could be said about the game is that some of the power tiles are clearly better than others, and it does seem like a lot of the best power tiles are within a certain color. I personally think that the white power tiles overwhelmingly are really, really useful. You start off getting the ones that give you a discount on all future power tiles, which in and of itself is huge, because this is also an action efficiency game and a point efficiency game. It's very difficult to get prayer points to do everything that you want to do, so that makes that super useful. And then if you go down the chain of other white tiles, like ones that give you a discount on enhancing your pyramids, which can not only get you better tiles, but is also potentially points. Another interesting aspect of the game, I'm just rolling from one thing to another. There's so many great things to unpack here. The way the victory point system works, it encourages combat, because combat is permanent victory points, can't be taken away from you. And if there's points throughout the game that's easy points, because eventually, if your opponent is also being very aggressive, they're going to end up with a unit that doesn't have many troops, so then you just slide in and attack them. But the game discourages turtling in this way because you're always going to be up, you're always going to be down. You'll always be able to have a powerful force that you can put against someone's weaker force, or perhaps they've run out of battle cards. They've already used their best battle cards, so now you can take advantage of that fact because you're fresh, you've got your best stuff, and you can think about that and how you best want to manage your resources. Knowing that my opponent is weaker, do I use my best battle card now or hold that back? Because this other guy is going to be coming to take my stuff too. So that whole interplay there really encourages you to just be on the offensive all the time, and I think that to a degree, you have to do that in this game. If you don't, like direct combat, this definitely is not the game for you, but you can do pretty well for much of the game not being hyper-aggressive too, and I like that. I've played games of this where I'm just like, well, I'm going red, I'm getting all the red tiles that are super aggressive and just going boom, 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 and attacking as much as I possibly can. But I've had games where I'm like, I'm going all blue, and I'm going to try to manage my resources as much as possible, and I'm going to camp out at the Sanctuary of All Gods and just keep sacking my guys, and I'm going to try to go for the pyramids to get them high enough to get those victory point tiles, things like that. But eventually, you're going to have to fight to make up that difference of points. And the game always has an interesting arc near the end, because you get to a point, and I've never had a game of Kemet that's not at least close, where there wasn't, where the player who was the furthest back was still only like 2 or 3 points behind everyone else. But that can be huge in Kemet. You're not talking about a huge point spread here. It's either 8 or 10 points you have to get to. But it always comes down to, okay, we're in the last round. You and I are neck and neck. How am I going to make this work? If I attack you here, you're just going to attack me over here. We'll each win those battles, but that's just a wash. What am I going to do to get that last point and get ahead of you? It's just very tense moment in the final rounds of the game that it's just like, what is the absolute most I can do to just get 1 point ahead of you, or to get the tiebreakers for myself, which has happened more times than I would like to say. Probably 2 or 3 times I've played this game, it's come down to like the third tiebreaker, and then it becomes like, who's a turn order, which is kind of frustrating, but then again, it always feels satisfying because I know that I've played a great game. And boy, I could just keep going on and on. This is such a wonderful game. I like it more and more and more. There's a review of an expansion that I'm going to have coming up with this, where I have some very interesting thoughts on, so do check that out as well. But certainly, if you haven't tried Kemet, definitely try it. If you're okay with aggression in games, if you're okay with the dudes in the map type, area control type of system, I think you're going to like it. I really do. This game has been a hit with pretty much everyone I've tried it with, even people who don't typically like this style of game. That is Kemet from Mad Games, highest recommendation. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.